cost of service principle, as well as the procedural requirements, the public hearing that Michelle mentioned that I'll describe a little bit. And I should also mention we worked closely with city's legal counsel, Prop 218 legal counsel. They reviewed all the documents, reviewed the methodology for the study. We had some discussion about that, made a few adjustments. So everything has been reviewed by legal counsel to ensure that we're compliant with Proposition 218. So some of the key factors that drove the results of the financial plan, as you could probably guess, the cost of everything goes up, just like in the regular world in our day-to-day lives. Operating costs associated with equipment, supplies, power, things that it takes to go out and operate and maintain the system, as well as personnel costs associated with city staff that take care of that stuff. And then the bigger one, though, is certainly the funding for the capital projects that were identified as part of that master plan and that then became part of the city's capital improvement plan. And I'll go to those on the next slide. And then finally, as Michelle also mentioned, the last rate adjustment, the rates were enacted in 2017. The last authorized increase was in 2022. So while the rates haven't changed since then, those costs have continued to increase. So essentially, your rates stayed at this level and your costs continue to go up for 3 years since those rates were last increased. All right, so let's talk about the methodology and the steps that we went through to calculate the rates and build the financial plan. So in a simple kind of description, what we do is take a look at how much revenue could be generated using the existing rates that are already in place if they were to not change, and compare that to what's required over the next 5 years in terms of operating costs and then escalating those based on cost escalators, building in the capital plan and all those things. So those light blue boxes on the top half of the slide there basically represent us taking a look at your existing customers, their existing billing records, and then reconciling that with your audited financials to be sure that all of those records tie with what you've received in terms of revenue, and then project that revenue forward over 5 years without any changes in the rates to see how much revenue could be generated. And then we compare that to the green boxes at the bottom, which is what we call a revenue requirement, which is essentially your budget, your annual required revenue you need to do all the things you need to do as a utility, including operating and maintenance costs. You don't have any debt to pay, so that box really doesn't apply. Capital, project expenditures, and then maintaining liquidity requirements through having reserve funds available. So we go through that process and determine, do we have enough revenue over the 5 years to pay for those things? And so this graphic, the two boxes kind of represent a very high-level look at that financial condition. So you see in the top box, year-by-year a comparison of revenues to expenditures. And you see from an operating and maintenance standpoint, excluding cost of capital projects, you're generating sufficient revenue to cover expenditures so that you see the dark blue bars are slightly higher than the light blue bars and the black line indicating the net result is positive. So from an operating standpoint, things are good. The bottom box represents available cash. And you can see over the 5-year period, those bars go gradually down until in the 5th year, any cash reserves, including cash reserves available for capital projects, would be completely exhausted. So as I mentioned, the capital projects were really kind of the drivers of the financial plan. So here you see a list of the capital projects, and these, again, came from the master planning exercise and the development of the capital plan out of that. And you see really the 4 biggest projects, the 1.7, so maybe I'll back up a step. So what you see is a list of projects on the left-hand side there. The funding source, which in all cases is cash, so no debt is going to be issued or required for these projects. And then for each of the 5 years, beginning with 2026, the amount required each year. And you see the 4 biggest amounts, the second one down, replacement of concrete pipe, that's $1.7 million. Go down a couple more lines, sewer point repair program, $1.8 million. And then 2 more pipeline replacement programs, the $3.3 million and $1.9 million. So these are all going out and replacing aging system components, aging pipelines, deteriorating pipelines, to make sure that you don't have any sanitary sewer overflows or pipe breakages or anything like that. So these are all projects to go out and maintain and replace existing aging infrastructure. So based on that analysis and the fact that we needed to increase revenue over the 5 years and increase rates to generate that revenue, we made the adjustments and then developed the following rates to make sure that will have revenue for all those projects and also to maintain the operating and maintenance budget as well. So you see the existing rates for the three categories: detached single-family residential, multifamily residential, and condominium, as well as mobile home park. And then the note describes how non-residential parcels are calculated based on an equivalency that is calculated using residential rates for sewer generation and calculating an equivalency for non-residential uses based on square footage. So you see the existing rate for a single-family home is $72, and I want to emphasize these are the annual amounts. These aren't monthly amounts or bi-monthly amounts. These are the annual amounts that are submitted to the Auditor Controller, Orange County Auditor Controller, to get into the tax bill. So you see it's currently at $72.25 a year, and in the next year it'll go up to $87, and then $105 the next year, and then on out till the end. And I have another graphic that kind of breaks this down a little bit more. So the first bar there you see is the current $72.25. In the first year, it would go up to $87, which is an annual increase of a little over $15. On a monthly basis, that's $1.26 a month for that first year's increase. And then you see the increases $18 the next year, $22 next year, and then finally it'll be $187 again annually in that fifth year, and that increases about $2.71 a month. So that's the increase for a typical one equivalent residential unit or single-family home over the 5-year period. Next, we took a look at how these rates would compare to a number of your neighboring communities. And so the graph here, the light green bars show Stanton's existing rate as well as the proposed rate. The dark black straight line, horizontal line across is the average of all of the different municipalities we looked at. And so you see, just above Stanton is Placentia and La Palma, and then all the way out to Seal Beach on the right. So this is all of those communities' current rates. This does not take into account, as most communities do, those rates will increase each year. Many are going through rate studies. I know for a fact at least one of them is, because we're working with them. And all cities typically go through rate studies on a 5-year cycle, and then within those 5-year rate programs they establish have annual increases built in. So, this again shows the proposed rates, the existing rates, and how they would compare today with all your neighbors. So you see still way below the average of $131 with the new proposed annual rate of $87.42. So let's just revisit quickly that graphic, the same one we showed at the beginning that showed what the financial situation looked like without any changes. So you see the top really is just now improved. It was already okay. We were already generating sufficient revenue to cover operating and maintenance and regular day-to-day costs. That just looks even a little bit better now. But you can see now on the bottom, we are maintaining cash to have available for capital projects and for emergencies and unexpected events. So in that 5th year, the cash balance is above the solid black line with enough available above that. That's just a minimum policy goal, that solid black line. The additional amount is available for capital projects that are in that capital plan. So that was the objective, to make sure we had enough cash in reserve to cover those capital projects and any, like I said, unforeseen events or emergencies. So just a quick overview of the next steps. And Michelle covered some of these. I kind of covered some of these at the beginning. So today, you've already received the capacity fee report. You've already taken action on that. I've just presented now the results of the rate study for the ongoing rates to pay for service to customers on an ongoing basis. You'll have discussion here. If you decide to move forward, you'll set a public hearing date for June 10th, and that public hearing is required under Proposition 218. Under Proposition 218, we're also required to mail out a notice at least 45 days in advance of that public hearing to all owners of property, notifying them of the public hearing date, and that notice will provide information about the rates, why the rates are going up, and a description of how the rates work, and also how to attend the public hearing and file a protest if they wish. Assuming the City Council moves forward, the deadline for us to mail those notices would be April 24th, meaning that would be the last day we can mail them and provide the 45-day notice for the June 10th public hearing. On June 10th, we would come back. I would come back. I'd present this information again for public who are here and anybody listening to hear this information again, to understand, the process we went through. The council would conduct a public hearing. Anyone would have an opportunity to speak at the public hearing. Anybody can also submit a written protest. If the council receives, at the conclusion of the public hearing, the clerk will tabulate the written protest, and those can be received all the way through that 45-day period up until the conclusion of the public hearing. If the council receives, or the city receives, written protests from more than a majority of the property owners, they can take no further action. So the process stops. You can't override that protest. The rates cannot be adopted. If there is not a majority written protest, meaning anything less than a majority, 50%, the council is not obligated to implement the rates. That you would move forward at your discretion. So you can't override the protest, and the lack of a protest doesn't compel you to implement the rates. So it's not a vote or not a ballot. It's what's called a written protest. So assuming there are no written protests and council decides to take action to implement the new rates, they would go into effect July 1 for the upcoming fiscal year. And on August 10th, the database would be, of the charges and the properties, would be submitted to Orange County for them to roll that up into the property tax billing system, and those taxes will go out in the fall, like property tax bills always do. So that concludes the presentation. So now available to answer any questions or fill in anything I might have missed.
Thank you. I just had a couple. In your professional opinion, we had a period of time where we didn't raise our fees at all. I was just wondering, my personal opinion is that sometimes during those good periods, if you do a slight raise, then you don't have to do a bigger raise. Hindsight's always great. I think that probably we did have, I think over, was it $1 million in reserves in our sewer fund at one time? So that's probably why we didn't do it. However, with the costs going up, we probably didn't know what the infrastructure improvements, CIPs, would be. So in the future, long after I'm gone and you guys are still here, I think that, Caesar, this is a really good job because you have to identify when you need to raise this so you don't have to make a big bump sometime in the future. Unfortunately, we would have run out of money in 2030 if we didn't do anything. That's kind of a precipice because that gives us 5 years to raise the money to do our capital improvement projects. So I don't think we should ever get ourselves in this position again. In the future, let's be more vigilant on this to make sure that we don't end up having to make big leaps. The nice thing is, for years, we always can say, well, we have the lowest lower rates in the city, in the county, but then we're going to tell them, well, we also have the poorest sewer system. Yeah, so you have to be very careful about that. Do you know what our reserves are projected to be in 2030 at this rate?
I just want to say, as of today, we have over $7 million of cash in our sewer capital improvement fund, which is like a couple 100% of our operating budget. I think that's why the decision was made. Let's see what the capital needs are. So, if nothing was done and we kept everything the same, we definitely have, $7 million of cash to fund, the first couple of years of CIP, but to not have a 100% increase to fund, the $16 million of CIP in, 5 years. We're trying to, we're going to spend the cash we have now on the CIP in the next 2 years, and then by the time we have those bigger projects in years 3, 4, and 5, these rate increases will have that cash available. I think on one of your slides, he wants to know what the projected cash reserve.
It was $4 million.
$4 million.
So about at least not quite, a little more than half of what we have, not quite half of what we have.
Right.
Is that enough, Caesar?
Our reserve policy is $1 million, for our capital improvement funding, which we can reevaluate when we bring the reserve policy for adoption. But go ahead, Caesar.
When was the last time we did our sewer survey?
Our last sewer master plan was in 2013.
That was about
So,
2 years ago.
So the master plan was in 2013, the last rate study was in 2017, correct?
Correct.
I'm not talking about the race study,
Yeah.
I'm talking about the infrastructure
Yeah,
study.
2013.
That's where we went out and checked everything?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any questions? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move it.
Second.
Do we need a roll call on this one?
Voice vote would suffice.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain?
Okay.
Okay. So when your toilet doesn't flush, don't come calling on me, okay?
Is with 4-1.
By the way, this is exactly what the city needs. And so thank you very much for doing that for us and working with our staff and our finance department and our engineering department. I think this gives us security for the future, and I think this is a lesson learned. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate the feedback. And it was definitely a collaborative effort with both Caesar, Michelle, and staff. And just to briefly address the comment you made about, not having rates increase and costs continue to go up. We do see that in a few cities, particularly during the COVID period. There were cities that we run into out there that did not increase rates, and they have to do just what you described, then make a catch-up at some point. So you're exactly right about how that works. So thank you again for the opportunity and the feedback and questions.
Before we move on to our next item, I wanted to just give anybody in the audience an opportunity to public comment on A, B, C, and C, A, B, and C, right?
Correct.
Yeah, okay, good. Is there anyone interested? Okay, good. We'll move on to D. This is an ordinance of the city council. I'm going to ask a favor, if you don't mind. I'd like to change the order of the agenda tonight, just briefly, if you don't mind. I'd like to bring up item E at this point, because we do have some representatives here, and it's been a long night for them. Are we okay with that? Okay, let's move on to E. This is options for firework management 2025 4th July season. Okay, go ahead, Patricia.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of the council. Based on council direction from November 2024, staff has prepared a study session for the council's consideration on fireworks management options for the 2025 4th of July holiday season. Everyone on the dais knows that fireworks are a controversial topic in Stanton. Over the years, the council has regularly discussed fireworks management options in response to community feedback. While the city's municipal code allows for the sale and use of fireworks categorized as safe and sane, the city also experiences a significant amount of illegal firework activity around the 4th of July holiday. To compound matters, Stanton is surrounded by cities that also experience significant legal and illegal fireworks activity. In discussions with residents, the main concerns surrounding fireworks activity are injuries, fire hazards, and loss of property, and noise pollution and quality of life. Each year, serious injuries and millions of dollars in property loss are caused by illegal fireworks throughout California. Severe burns, amputations, blindness, and in some cases, deaths are associated with the use of illegal fireworks. For information specific to Orange County, staff reference the Orange County Fire Authority's annual Independence Day After Action Report. In 2024, injuries associated with fireworks increased considerably to 66 total reported injuries for Orange County, up from 46 in 2023, representing a 43% increase. The majority of injuries were burns to the hands and/or fingers, with a sad statistic of 9 hand and/or finger amputations, with 4 of those being for minors. The OCFA does note in their report that the actual number of injuries experienced is likely much higher and were either not treated or not reported. Regarding fires and property loss, in 2024, there was $1.6 million worth of property loss reported, up from $180,000 in 2023, representing an almost 800% increase. 4 homes actually caught on fire due to fireworks in 2024 in the cities of Santa Ana, Lake Forest, Westminster, and Mission Viejo. Finally, although not a statistic that OCFA reports on, the city receives the most complaints each year about noise pollution and quality of life. The loud noises generated by fireworks impact the quality of life of residents, particularly infants, small children, the elderly, pets, and those who suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. The city does have adopted rules and regulations related to fireworks in compliance with state law memorialized in Chapter 17.04 of the Stanton Municipal Code. The chapter is titled Safe and Sane Fireworks and includes 13 sections. The chapter allows for the sale of safe and sane fireworks starting on July 1st from noon to 10 p.m. through July 4th, with July 2nd, 3rd, and 4th sales allowed from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. Sales may only be made to persons 18 years or older. The municipal code also allows for the discharge of safe and sane fireworks starting on July 1st through July 4th between the hours of 10 a.m. and 11 p.m. Violations of this chapter are considered a misdemeanor, and there are significant penalties, including fines and/or imprisonment in the county jail. In addition, the city is authorized to issue administrative citations with associated fines. Although violations are clearly defined along with associated penalties, it is difficult to enforce the current prohibitions on illegal use for a number of reasons. First is the temporary nature of the illegal activity. As an example, if you have a number of people discharging illegal fireworks, they currently must be observed by a deputy in the act. It is very easy for those individuals to hide or temporarily stop the illegal activity, making it very difficult for deputies to issue citations. Next is the high frequency of which the activity occurs on and around the 4th of July each year. It would be almost impossible to staff the various neighborhoods where complaints originate to again observe people in the illegal act. Finally is the number of staff and deputies able to respond to calls. There are limited resources that are still needed for other higher priority calls for service. These challenges traditionally result in a low number of issued citations relative to the number of violations reported or experienced by residents. The statistics shown on the slide before you from the Orange County Sheriff's Department highlight the challenges associated with enforcement of illegal fireworks. Calls for service specifically on July 4th in 2023 were 12, and in 2024 were 18. Calls throughout the year for fireworks-related issues, including the days leading up to and after the 4th of July, as well as those during the New Year's holiday season, were 101 in 2023 and 132 in 2024. The actual number of citations issued in 2023 were 2, and in 2024, 1. Acknowledging these challenges, the City Council asked staff for additional strategies to consider to improve public health and safety, as well as the community's quality of life during the 4th of July holiday season. To broaden the city's strategies beyond traditional enforcement tactics, staff surveyed efforts utilized by other jurisdictions similarly challenged by fireworks issues. These efforts were then reviewed internally with the Director of Public Safety, the Chief of Police, and the City Attorney's Office to determine viability and feasibility given its existing resources. A subset of 7 options that could be implemented in 2025 are provided for the Council's discussion and consideration. Option 1, Fireworks Buyback Program. This program would allow individuals to voluntarily surrender illegal fireworks without legal repercussions in exchange for gift cards to Stanton businesses. The fiscal impact of this program would be determined by the dollar amount of the gift cards exchanged for illegal fireworks. Council could set a maximum budget which would be expended until depleted.
Can I comment on that?
Sure.
Oh, thank you. I like that idea. I'd like to explore it if the council would like to, but one of the things that I'd like to do is, why don't we ask the vendors or the manufacturers if they would be willing to change legal fireworks for illegal. Now, I know that at one point, we went up to Sacramento. We tried to get the government up there to do the exchange and take all the illegals and ship them back to the vendors because they can sell them in other states. And then that way that would reduce the cost of the federal money that was just sitting there not being used. So if we were a city that we could work legally with our vendors to take our illegal ones and trade them in for legal, that would get the illegal off the street and we wouldn't have to buy gift cards. I thought maybe that's something we might want to. Go ahead, Don.
So, although I wouldn't be against looking at this option, I know it's one of many. One of the concerns I have with buybacks is that some people like to take advantage of the option of buybacks. So they'll go ahead and, let's say if it's relating to any other type of buyback, they'll go ahead and they'll acquire the thing that's illegal that they're gonna, buy back from, and usually the value given for that object usually exceeds the value in which, then the product that you bought. So unfortunately, I feel like it might be a loss if we decide to do this, but I'm always willing to look at some data for that. But that's the only thing I have seen around this.
No, and I understand completely, and I think you're right, but my point is if we're not paying anything and it's, the vendors are paying for it, they're supplying the legal for the illegal, then we're good. The question is, are they gonna be able to afford that? Is it cost prohibitive? And we still have to work through the fire department, that's all.
Well, if they do it, I have no problem with that.
Beg your pardon?
I said that if they are willing, like the firework companies, to do a firework buyback, I would not be against that.
Okay. Go ahead.
They need vendors to buy back their own fireworks.
Beg your pardon?
I don't think they would buy them back. They've sold them.
Well, they went to the state of California and offered to do that, and was turned down by the state.
Well, this would just be us doing it ourselves, the
Yeah,
city.
right. I'm talking about just us locally. Well, we have to ask them. Maybe they say yes, maybe they say no. It's worth an ask, that's all.
Councilmember Taylor, I think for clarification, Mayor Shaver is saying somebody would turn in illegal fireworks to like a TNT Safe and Sane booth, and then they would get Safe and Sane ones in exchange. So,
Okay.
okay. So are we going to discuss each one as I give options, or do you want me to go through?
Assess each one by option and make a choice as we go through.
Okay, that's fine.
Mayor Shaver, they shouldn't have the illegal fireworks with the legal fireworks. They should definitely have them separate.
Member Taylor has made a motion, or not a motion, but has made a suggestion that we discuss each option as it's presented. So if the council would like to move forward with that, we can have any questions, comments, discussion on option one, and you can give staff direction.
Options do we have?
7.
We have 7. Would you prefer to take each option with comments, or do you want to comment at the end?
Yes, let's go through each one. We can make comments and make a decision on it right here and now, rather than go back over it again.
Okay, how many people are okay with Gary's recommendation? Is there any objection to taking them one at a time?
No.
Okay, let's go.
The only comment I will make is just please keep in mind that each one requires staff time. So if you start saying yes up front without maybe hearing some of the ones at the end, you still may want to revisit it, so just to keep that in mind.
Well, number 1 can be answered because we have a representative from the firework industry here. So go ahead. No, we're ready. We're ready.
So, so go on to the next one?
Yeah.
We're not taking action on each one?
No, let's take action. Let's take action at the end. We just need to get,
Councilmember Taylor is saying he wants to take action on each one.
all right, if I'm privileged, Mr. Kelly, would you comment on my comment? See if it's legal or not. I think if they bring in a $300 howitzer, you should give them a Piccolo Pete, okay?
Is this Mr. Mayor? Who is this? Who is speaking?
He said.
Test.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. My name is John Kelly, Vice President with TNT Fireworks. It is the distributor here in Stanton, as well as 11 other cities here in Orange County, 217 jurisdictions throughout the state. Mayor Shaver's comments earlier about the program that we've proposed multiple times as the state of California was referred to as a buyback program. Each year, this state allocates money toward the enforcement and education statewide about illegal fireworks. usually around $6-7 million. And each year, the state finds itself in a position of disposing of tons and tons and tons of illegal confiscated fireworks. Under state law, any fireworks that's confiscated here in Stanton, usually taken in by PD. PD turns it over to fire department. Fire department gets on the phone, calls the state fire marshal, who by state law is tasked with the removal and disposal of illegal fireworks in the state. So the call comes in, state fire marshal will come by, ultimately pick up fireworks from 58 counties throughout the state and consolidate them into 26 bunkers they have strategically located throughout the state. What happens when the bunkers are full? We take the $6 or $7 million and we get on the phone and we call a company called Clean Harbors, and for $10 a pound, Clean Harbors will gladly come to the county and pick it up and drive it to Louisiana, who will happily burn it out somewhere in Louisiana. And that leaves zero balance in the coffers for education enforcement. And the next year, the confiscation starts again and the cycle repeats itself. And so therein we find the situation. So to your point, Mayor, yes, we did propose that. We identified that probably 70% of that product that's going out of state to be destroyed was still in its original case, still in its original taping, and we had suggested that we could cut a deal with the state fire marshal to take that illegal product at our expense, pay for it, and the money that the state received from that could go towards the disposal of the other really dangerous stuff that ends up in those bunkers: pipe bombs, homemade fireworks, black powder, et cetera. And we never got that one off the ground. So there have been individual programs with municipalities throughout the country in terms of buyback programs. I guess my first question is, how much are we confiscating now and how much are we talking about? The idea, however, that I did hear was, could we bring it to a stand? The answer would be no. I don't think we can do that. Because that would be an illegal activity on the nonprofit organization's part to store fireworks that is not allowed. So,
You know, a couple of things on that. There's really no mechanism for local government to buy back. As far as the cost is pretty much going to be on the burden on the city, because we can't, from what you're telling me, we can't really get a partner. Is that correct?
correct.
So
That would put both of us in jeopardy with the state of
You know,
California.
I have sold for fireworks for at least 38 years. I started many years ago in 1988 in the firework booth, so I understand it. I don't think anybody in this city that has illegal fireworks is going to trade them in with anybody. And number two, I don't think we should use our taxpayers' money for that, because I don't think it's going to be effective. What I prefer to do is just recommendation, instead of buying gift cards, we buy a couple of extra guys to go out and get citations. Just a thought.
We agree on that, Mr. Mayor. Is that okay with you guys?
Mr. Kelly, don't go too far off, because we're going to go, are you guys, we're going to keep going here. So just relax. How do we feel about this one?
I'd say no. We don't want to do it. It's not worth the effort, and it's going to cost us too much money.
John?
Who's with two community groups, I'm kind of concerned about the volunteer side of explosives. So I'm not sure I feel comfortable with that.
Okay.
Is that a yes or a no?
Oh, I mean, do I get to keep them?
Is there a
No.
yes or a no?
No.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Victor.
Yeah, but I don't, no.
Got 5 no's, we're ready to go to number 2.
All right. Option number 2, used in Hawaii, is creating a reward program to encourage individuals to report major suppliers of illegal fireworks. Such suppliers might include mobile sales vehicles traveling through neighborhoods, home-based sales in Stanton neighborhoods, and illegal retail sales through other legal retail outlets. Any major cache of illegal fireworks observed should be immediately reported to the Orange County Sheriff's Department by calling 911. The fiscal impact of this program would be determined by the dollar amount of any reward that the City Council would choose to use as part of the reward program. Council could set a maximum budget which would be expended until depleted.
What are our fines and forfeitures on that? Do we have to give some of that money to anybody else, or do we collect it ourselves?
We collect it, but we have to give 65% to the fire marshal.
65% of any fines?
Correct.
Okay, and we're going to be discussing fines later, right?
Yes, as part of the social host ordinance.
Okay,
Okay, I don't see this one being very effective. You're going to have 3 or 4 people call on one person shooting off fireworks.
So this is only for the sale. So this is not for actual use, it's for the sale of illegal fireworks.
I'm not completely against it, I just don't know whether it would work.
I think what we're talking about is a hotline that people can call to report them, is that right?
Only the sale, not the use. If somebody goes to their local sandwich shop, the mom and pop sandwich shop, and they happen to be selling illegal fireworks under the counter, somebody could call the city and say, hey, I saw them selling illegal fireworks.
And the thing is, Gary,
Suppliers, I'm sorry, I didn't read that correctly. Suppliers of illegal fireworks, not them shooting them off.
Correct.
Okay, I'm sorry. I
and
misread that.
we have had reports from our citizens that have reported certain businesses that sell fireworks. In fact, they have a lot of them in the back room. So do we have a established ordinance with fines for that or anything yet? Is it covered by the business license?
I like this one.
So if you are in violation of the municipal code, that is a reason to have your business license revoked. So that's one thing, if you're just in any type of violation of the municipal code. Separate from that, yes, possession of illegal fireworks is called out in the municipal code. So if they're possessing it with the intent to sell, that would qualify.
So we could send out a notice to our business community, letting them know that we could revoke their business license if they,
On our sign, on the website,
well, I'd let them notify them and then
the
let
big sign
them know
at
that
Rodeo 39.
I think a fine and lose their business license. I don't think they'd be selling fireworks anymore.
I say yes on this one.
John?
Yes?
Oh, I didn't hear.
I do have one question. Yeah.
Be worth it trying this out. If we could have multiple tools going off, this year at once, see what gets a lot of traction, I think we could do some change.
Clarification I have on the matter is if we have multiple phone numbers going around, that might be confusing for residents. I don't know if there's any kind of way we can queue that up.
We have a voicemail that we have used in the past for fireworks-related complaints that we used over the last 2 years. It would be the same number. So it would either be 911 if you see a major cache, they should not call the city report line. But if it's something smaller, they can call and leave a message with their information. They can be anonymous if they like. And the city council can decide if you just want a tip line, because I think people would be motivated to call whether or not there was a reward. You don't have to offer the reward component. That just happened to be what the other city I took this example from offered.
Okay, so whether a resident's calling to report because somebody down the street's lighting one off, or my neighbor's selling a cash across the street, they'd be the same phone number.
So nobody's calling to report usage. This is only for sales.
I'm speaking about the phone number usage. Would we be using the same line for somebody reporting fireworks and selling fireworks?
Nobody, we don't have a line to report usage right now.
Okay,
That's something we can discuss later.
in the past.
Are we okay with reporting a business that's selling illegal fireworks, especially to kids, right? Okay, that one's a good one.
Does the council just want to have a tip line? Do you want to offer some type of incentive for people to call and report in, or is it just a tip line?
Why don't we set some funds apart, a little bit of funds apart, see how it goes, see if the monetary incentive would get anybody to say something. I don't think that would be the case, but it's worth a try.
So how much would the council like to budget for that?
We have a budget for it?
You don't. Michelle and I will have to figure out a place to get the monies from, if you decide to offer any type of incentive.
Well, maybe we could go and ask for the 39 to give us gift cards. Me, I'm telling you right now, if somebody sees somebody selling illegal fireworks, they're either going to be mad or they're going to probably want to buy them too. So it's going to be the best of both worlds. So I think what Donald said is let's not invest a lot of money in it, but let's make it available. And by telling each business that they could lose their license, I think that might be a deterrent in itself. Just a thought.
So I'm hearing just a tip line with no incentive at this time.
Very quick question. I just want to ask the opinion of Mr. Wren. I want to know what you think of the efficacy of this if we would try it out. What's your opinion?
So I think last year was the first year where we received information and became more aware of commercial locations selling illegal fireworks. In the past, we've dealt with some kind of mobile van type situations. So my department, we already have protocols set up, and we've discussed internally where we will actually try to make some of these purchases and take a look at determining who's who, and then through the business license and related administration citation process, address it that way. I don't think the numbers are going to be large. I think we can effectively manage. We have had a fireworks line in the past, and I think that could double as a tip line as well. But good thing about being 3.5 square miles, we do have a plan in place to address the locations that are more prone to this activity, such as the smaller markets and liquor stores that we are in quite regularly already.
Would you be able to help us with enforcement on something like that? How do you feel about that?
That would be something that we'd have to discuss to see what that would even look like. So if something is discovered through the city channels, then obviously to bring us in to dispose of it properly would be an option. But this would be something that we could talk about in another meeting to see what we're actually looking to do and what our support, if any, that we could have put into it.
Is an ounce of prevention worth a pound of cure? In other words, if you get out there and confiscate something from a business, does that kind of relieve some of the illegals that are out there? Or you think it make a dent at all?
Absolutely. Would it help? Yes. But we don't have the ability to go just look in businesses for illegal fireworks. So that's where I've discussed it with the city manager, that it's the most effective way is if somebody does see something, that's where we encourage the public for the mobile vans and stuff like that have pulled up on the streets. Or if people are in a store and they are purchasing it, that they need to, or they see someone making a purchase from something in a back room under the counter or whatever, that's when they need to make notification to the sheriff's department.
Do you have to have a search warrant?
A search warrant? To just go in and take somebody's property, you would need to have articulable facts to why you would need to be in there and why you would need to serve a search warrant. So this search warrants served on illegal fireworks are generally cases that our hazardous device squad would work. But most of their things are, those are cases that they come across it to collect, and then the case would take them to other locations potentially.
Would this be a good opportunity to have an undercover sting operation if we knew? Too much trouble, huh? Yes. Okay. Go ahead, Dave.
If this council decides to move on the tip line, I think it would be prudent to have like an ad campaign or something where city staff would go to each business in order to get like our population, under the same page, so it'll be, efficacious. But apart from that, I think option 2 is something that I think that we can look into. I'm excited to see all the other options we have.
I'll support that, especially if we're doing the people who are selling, you can notify the people selling and the people buying. Well, everybody okay on that? All right, you're right. Okay, that's a 5-0. Next.
So the council actually provided the perfect segue into option 3, which is pursuing business license revocations for legal businesses selling illegal fireworks. So again, as I mentioned in the Stanton Municipal Code, it allows for the suspension or revocation of existing business licenses in the following instances: if the building, structure, premises, or the equipment used to conduct the business activity fails to comply with all applicable health, zoning, fire, building, and safety laws of the state or city, and if the business or any of the business activities or operations is prohibited by any local or state law, statute, rule, or regulation, and if the applicant has made any false, misleading, or fraudulent statement of material fact in the application for the business license or in any report or statement required to be filed with the city. So if any legal business is caught selling illegal fireworks, there are 1, 2, or 3 municipal code violations we could utilize to revoke their business license. And to the council's point, we agree that with proper communication and sharing of information, this should prevent a lot of legal businesses from pursuing this illegal activity. So the fiscal impact of this option would be staff time to communicate the information, as well as if there is a business found guilty of this illegal activity, then the staff time to process the business license suspension or revocation.
In your experience, how many, or an estimation around how many shops have been, alleged to sell illegal fireworks?
Information related to last year, it was under 5. I think from a staff time perspective, it is manageable. I mean, they're not doing this in Walmart. These are the markets and such that fit a particular profile. So we would probably review locations essentially probably in the 20s, and then we got information that after the fact that 1, 2, 3 were potentially involved. So I think we could manage that from a staff time standpoint as far as following through and seeing what we could get.
The only thing I would like to check with HC on is we're not required to let businesses know about this, because if they violate it, they violate it. We don't have to give them a warning, right?
Mayor and council, that's right. The city's municipal code is the city's municipal code. We don't typically send businesses, notice of here are all the laws that you have to comply with. There's an idea or a legal principle that you should know the law, right? That said, giving notices does be able to forestall a business from saying, oh, I didn't know, and therefore, I shouldn't be revoked. We've seen that actually come up in public hearings before. And so it's a good practice to do to preempt that argument from businesses.
Support what HG had to say. I mean, the best outcome we can have is that somebody doesn't do it to begin with, and giving them proper notice also kind of protects us in the way that we can say, you should have known. And rather, I mean, how many times are we trying to communicate with people going, oh, you didn't know that this works like this in Stanton? I mean, it's an unreasonable expectation.
So I think that this is a good deterrent. I think we're going to probably notify as many people as we can, both buyers and sellers. So I think we all support option 3. There you go, 5-0.
Okay, option 4. This is for increased directed enforcement by the Orange County Sheriff's Department. This would entail one moment. This would entail having increased deputies to be deployed between July 1st through July 4th. The caveat to this is there's no guarantee of how many extra deputies we could schedule for that time period. So we could receive the council's direction if you would like us to pursue that and provide those overtime opportunities, and we would see who would sign up for them. The overtime rate on average ranges from $120 per hour to $134 per hour, depending on who signs up for the overtime.
Okay, if we really want to get serious about this, I think this is a must. I think we can work out the details on how much we want to spend at another time, but I think this has to be part of it. This is going to be like a shock and awe campaign for 4 days. The whole plan, to really let people know that we're not tolerating illegal fireworks in the city of Stanton.
One potential thing that comes up in my brain is that we should really see how much, like, per deputy they, confiscate fireworks at, just to see if this is where we should be putting our eggs at, especially if, we're going to be hiring substantial amount of overtime for July 4th. I think it's essential that we get, like, at least a reading as to see, like, if we would get an extra patrol, what's the likelihood that they would, intercept fireworks?
I think we need to do it at least 2 days, the 3rd and the 4th. Whether we need 1, 2, 3, or 4, I'm not sure. That would be a budget type of a decision. But I think we need extra patrols. We need to know. We know some places in the city already where they're going to be selling illegal fireworks. We know they do Orangewood between Dale and Beach every single year, correct? Yes. Yes, every single year. So we know there. We might as well do it for 4. Do they do it all 4 days?
Oh, well before. Hotline?
Is there any data based off of how many, confiscations we have or anything surrounding this?
So we have, in the past 2 years, the Orange County Sheriff's Department has not confiscated any caches of illegal fireworks in the city of Stanton. And we issued 1 citation in 2024 and 2 citations in 2023. Because remember, for the deputies to be able to issue the citations, they have to observe it in progress. It's very difficult. I think what the value you would be getting with, and Captain Pierce can jump in, the value you would be getting with overtime is just the increased presence. I wouldn't set an expectation that all of a sudden we're going to be able to confiscate, and the whole confiscation process is a long, lengthy process as well. It's not just a deputy can pick it up and throw it in their car and go. They actually have to coordinate with the Orange County Sheriff's Department bomb squad. So I just want to make sure that the council is setting their expectations with each of these options. This is more going to be, if there's extra deputies patrolling around the 4th of July, driving through neighborhoods, people are probably going to run into their garage or throw the firework in the bushes, wait until the deputy car passes, and then continue on their activity. Because we're not going to cite a deputy in a neighborhood and just have them sit there. So, Captain Pierce, if you want to add anything on to that, I just want to help manage expectations.
No, I agree that if the city puts forth a large sum of money for overtime, it's an option. What I have to do mandatory is make sure that I have our basic contractual obligations met with the shift deputies. So on day shift, that's 4, and sometimes we go down to 3, and we don't have somebody signing up just for that overtime. That's what we need to logistically always manage first as a priority. So having the city throw, whatever we came up with for a sum for that time period, I can't guarantee that each one of those overtime slots would be filled because overtime is an option. I can't force them to do it. I have to make sure that the basic staffing model is fulfilled first and foremost, and then we get into those. So I don't know what that would look like as we get closer, to be honest. And then leaving somebody in a neighborhood on a street corner in the 4th of July when it hits peak time can get interesting as well. So deputies are mobile, but we do need the public's help mostly throughout these times of year, the New Year's and the 4th of July, because the public has to be our ears. And when they see something, we have a lot of people that are reluctant to also be the signer. And those are some of the things that, if we don't observe it, but the public does, they're the actual victim, they want to sign for the violation, that can help us out too. But a lot of them are, when we review these calls for service during New Year's and 4th of July, no contact. The caller just calls it in, and they don't want any contact, and they won't leave their number. They'll remain anonymous. So those are some of the operational challenges that we face. And so I wouldn't want to put forth a false expectation that you're going to hire 20 slots of overtime each day, and you're going to see, 100 deputies out on the street. That's not realistic.
Understood.
Okay.
How much was, offhand, do you know how much was spent last year in deputies, overtime?
We did not have any overtime last year.
My comment's going to be very simple. In order for us to give a citation, you have to actually catch the individual in violating the law by lighting the firework. If they have them in your possession, then that's a little different story, but that's also very tough. So if we were to hire extra deputies undercover, which we have in the past, it's not effective. And on the 4th of July, the few deputies that we have out have a lot of other things to do besides catch a guy lighting a firework, trust me. First of all, they can't be there very long to watch him do it. Most of them have radios telling them when our patrol is coming by, and a lot of them are intoxicated and shoot them off anyway. So the problem is that if it was effective, then I say yes for overtime. I think there's other ways of enforcement, and I'm going to make a recommendation. As you know, I participated in the statewide fireworks study. We had everybody all up and down the state. What we need to do is spend about $5,000 and get a drone, and then that drone takes actual footage and reports it. We have our sheriff's department, if they're available, take care of business, and we have our code enforcement issue citations. And we up the amount of money that's going to cost to pay for our drone.
That makes sense. It's going to come up on drones in just a minute. Chief, if we see vans pulling up and selling fireworks on Orangewood, if we have a couple of officers, a couple of deputies there, we can do something, right? We can confiscate the product, if nothing else?
If somebody actually calls that in and it's happening and it's witnessed, then yes, we can possibly.
John will call it in this year.
We can possibly create the
Happens every
detention
day in the
and
neighborhood.
investigate what's going on.
Okay.
Go ahead, John.
Since Gary wants to refer to me 10 times on this matter, last year, we've had a chronic issue with this little strip mall outside my neighborhood, so I went out and saw a neighbor of mine was trying to film with a cell phone, thinking that was going to be the method to make them stop. And I just come and told him, go home. Let me just go sit at a distance and watch this. So I sat out there for about 2 hours. I placed a call with the sheriffs. I did have a callback order with them, and so I had a response in about 45 minutes. During that period, I was just taking videos and so forth of them firing off the legal fireworks, and sheriffs pull up, and they had seen them actually fire them off, and pulled up and talked to the group of people there, about 4 or 5 people all standing around the legal fireworks at that strip mall. With the callback, in total, about the total time I was out there was about a little over 2 hours, just to observe and report that situation that was happening there. But in the good news, they didn't come back for the 4th of July, so I was happy about that. But it can be very time-consuming, to be able to identify, report, and hope that they're still there. But in case of that strip mall outside my neighborhood, it's practically business.
Okay, so number 4, we take a quick vote on that. Go ahead, Gary, you want to comment?
Chief, we can ask the bomb squad to be in our city again, could we?
Without, the bomb squad is actually responsible for all of Orange County. So OCSD.
You have to start someplace, though.
Right, well, they have a lot of responsibilities with everybody else, and there's only so many investigators on the bomb squad. So they are strategically stationed and for optimum response to anywhere. So that's where if they have to go to Yorba Linda, or if they have to go to Newport Beach or to Huntington Beach, and they also have obligations for larger
23 or
fireworks.
24, we had them in our city, and then they got called to South County, and
Right, and
we
that's.
didn't quite get what we expected.
And that's, I have already been in conversations with the supervisors over there, and that model doesn't work just to put everybody in putting all your eggs in one basket, because if you've got 2 down south, 2 central, 2 up north, then they've got a little bit more deployment model, but you couldn't put all 10 people in one station and be effective throughout the county.
Do we have a container that we can put them in until the bomb squad gets here?
No, we don't.
Would that be something that we might want to invest in?
I would recommend against that. The bunkers like that are actually specially designed, and in case of there is an incident where the fireworks discharge, then at least they're safely contained. I wouldn't want to bring that back to the city hall area or into the station if we could avoid that. I think there's certain zoning rules and regulations with all of that as well too. But to identify them, like current practice, identify them in the field and contact the bomb squad for best protocol. I mean, when we do find M80s or smaller things, there's protocols, and then bomb squad, we will turn those over to them, but the larger caches of items found.
What about citation without confiscation?
I'm sorry, what?
Citation without confiscation. In other words, citing, but you don't take them.
I think that would defeat the purpose, Mr. Mayor.
I beg your pardon?
I think that would be defeating the purpose. If we found somebody with the illegal fireworks, we cite them and we do take possession.
So tell me about our process. How much does that tie you up? Let's say you actually find somebody. How long does that take?
When we do find somebody, it can take anywhere from 20 minutes to investigate and have probable cause to search the person, and then take their property, seize the illegal property, and then we have to wait for bomb squad at a point in time to hand that property over. So, and that could be a little bit later, depending on what is seized and what the condition of it is. Or if it's homemade, manufactured, we really don't want to be touching pipe bombs or any type of explosive if we can avoid it.
Go ahead. Yeah, let's take a vote on number 4.
Regarding, with my own experience and just having seen operators of illegal fireworks and even with them operating outside the businesses, seeing a marked unit is wonderful. They'll stop firing for the minute or 2 that the marked unit's there. As soon as the marked unit's gone, well, free reign again. What opportunities are there, black units, undercover? I mean, is there any opportunities there?
Again, that would be at a cost of overtime. We have one blacked out unit for our set team at the city, and then that would be getting investigations involved, which would be overtime, but we'd be pulling from other places that maybe hiring if they can even hire them, because every city on the 4th of July in the Sheriff's Department's jurisdiction is faced with these same challenges. So everybody's drawing from the same pool of people to try to get overtime positions filled if they can, or just maintain their own staffing levels as well. Plus special events that they have for parks and everything else, those out at Irvine Lake or Emerald Bay, stuff like that. There are Mile Square Park. Those are things that we put support to as well. So the pool dries up.
Just use black vinyl wrap on the doors for the night?
probably be pretty labor intensive.
Okay, let's vote on this. Anybody in favor of paying overtime?
For a few positions. Otherwise, we won't be able to enforce.
No.
Okay,
Utilize the money to buy drones, more effective, get more area covered.
and then we can have the drone information given to a deputy if they're free to handle it, or our staff. If I was going to recommend, Gary, that if we decide to go with drones, that would be a good time to have one deputy overtime to handle just that. And that way, when he goes out there, it's a slam dunk, and we don't have to worry about it.
Well, if you use the drones and you use the, what is it, the ordinance where we can find the
Host-
person whose house
host ordinance.
do we even need a deputy? Can't we just, we don't even need a deputy
The proposal
for
doesn't
that.
require a deputy.
What you can do, we can either do it with in-house staff or a deputy. We'll get to that in a minute, but right now, I don't recommend overtime for just.
You don't want any overtime?
Not for this, no, not driving around. It doesn't work.
If there's other aspects of this that would require deputy overtime, I would not be against that, but it has to be with something else.
And the chief says doesn't work too
Okay.
good, so.
So 1-4?
We have other options.
Okay, option
That's
5?
what's nice about this.
Option 5.
We're finally prepared this time.
I have it at 5.
Trish, option 5, please. Thank you. Okay, so option 5 is another overtime option. Again, this cannot be mandated. This would be voluntary if internal city staff signed up for these shifts, but it would be to increase directed patrols by city staff and city-marked vehicles through neighborhoods between July 1st through July 4th. I think all of the same concerns and comments and discussion we had about Orange County Sheriff's Department overtime would come into play here as well. There is a certain element of increased risk for our staff. There is a certain element of it's going to be very temporary in nature, whatever dampening effect you have in a particular neighborhood. But this is an option the council can consider. The overtime rate on average for internal city staff is approximately $86 per hour fully burdened.
Jim, how do you feel about if we had drones and we write a citation because we have the documentation, so simultaneously as they're doing illegals, we have it on a drone, you knock on the door and hand them a ticket?
So that's not how we would propose the drone program to work, but you can certainly ask.
Whoa.
Okay.
I wanted to know about this. How you feel about issuing tickets, Jim?
I think issuing citations to social host ordinance or businesses that we identify. I think that's realistic. I don't think having something that's going to lead to anything.
Wanted to see it, because you're the people who are going to be knocking on doors or walking out there.
Yeah, I don't think there's a path forward for.
We did not do that.
So how would you like to see your department work that night? What do you think's effective?
I'm not, in a lot of ways, I'm not particularly comfortable with my staff being out that night, considering what we've done essentially on a volunteer basis over the past 3 years. In like on an educational. That being said, but I don't think it have unarmed city personnel. I think, honestly, I think there's an opportunity.
And here you're absolutely right, because John, for many years, John has taken videos from my place. And if you take a look at those videos, we're surrounded by 8 cities. And the 8 cities that surround us are completely ablaze, except for 5 areas in our city that every year, those 5 areas are the only ones doing it. If we could just stop those 5 areas, it would eliminate 90% of the illegal fireworks in our city. And the ones that we get complaints from are things coming from our bordering usually. Go ahead.
So we
Mayor and
do
I are
have,
in
wow,
complete
it's working
agreement
again.
on that. I completely agree with you on that.
We do have the high usage areas identified, and we do update that every year. We go out the day after the 4th of July. We get the input from the tip line. A lot of it is we'll go out and observe burn marks and all the debris that everyone leaves out. So we know the hot spots, and we work with the sheriff's department. And obviously, based on availability, we'll provide those hotspot areas to them. And, you know, there's been years where I felt like we've been able to hit it and done well with it. There's a couple years ago, there was a homicide on the 4th of July, and that changed our fireworks patrol. You know, there's obviously things that happen on a night that can be that impactful, but those locations are given to the sheriff's department, and then as available, they've gone in the past and, you know, patrolled in those areas.
You know, as we talk about these things and we see our options, it feels like we don't have the capacity to enforce our way out of this, but we do have the capacity to incentivize a lot of people to be able to, you know, curb the way that we use fireworks. You know, I'm still holding out for the drones aspect of it. You know, I hope that drones could help us with the enforcement aspect, but it seems like we have to really heavily rely on incentivizing people to speak up on their own. You know, because not only are we seeing like a reduction or a low number of calls like about fireworks in general, you know what I mean? So it seems like we have to be kind of prudent and get people on board first before we start, you know, implementing the enforcement side. As once we have like, you know, lots of residents, you know, calling in and enforcing, I imagine it would be a lot easier.
Go ahead, John.
I agree with Torres. There's an inherent pessimism, I mean, at this rate. And I live next to an unincorporated area, and that place lights off incredibly, and there's nothing we're gonna do about it over here. That's North Patrol's jurisdiction. But yeah, it goes on all around us. I mean, no matter which direction you look, we're gonna have illegal fireworks. And you know, for instance, the mayor lives up in the north. Well, actually, 2 of our members live up in the northwest corner of the city. And I've sat there with my drone. I've watched illegal fireworks going off in Cyprus. They're banned in Cyprus, and any which way you cross it, it's gonna happen.
Okay, with the,
Okay, let's go.
yeah,
Vote
can
on
we
number-
vote on this item and move on to the next?
Anybody want this? Okay, that's 5-0 no. Thank you. Next. Off, John.
Okay. Option 6, disallow the sale of safe and sane fireworks in the city. This option would disallow the sale of safe and sane fireworks in Stanton. While the city currently permits the sale of safe and sane fireworks, while less disruptive in regard to noise and illegal fireworks, these fireworks still have the potential to create quality of life issues related to noise and potential health and safety risks. As of June 2024, 11 cities in Orange County allow for the sale of safe and sane fireworks. These include the cities of Anaheim, Buena Park, Costa Mesa, Fullerton, Garden Grove, Huntington Beach, Los Alamitos, Santa Ana, Stanton, Villa Park, and Westminster. The fiscal impact. The City Council has historically awarded safe and sane fireworks sales licenses to the Youth Assistance Foundation of Stanton and the Boys and Girls Club of Stanton. The Youth Assistance Foundation of Stanton has historically used proceeds to fund the purchase of toys for the annual Santa Siren event and academic scholarships for Stanton youth. Gross sales for 2024 for the Youth Assistance Foundation of Stanton was $47,126, with net revenue to the nonprofit of $15,782. The Youth Assistance Foundation of Stanton has notified the city staff that beginning in this year, in 2025, they will no longer apply for a permit to sell fireworks due to concerns with with their own volunteer safety and lack of volunteer participation. The Boys and Girls Club uses proceeds to fund various programs and to ensure no child is ever turned away due to financial hardship. Gross sales reported for 2024 for the Boys and Girls Club was $42,314, with net revenues to the nonprofit of $9,800. And my understanding is the Boys and Girls Club is intending to apply for a permit this year.
Okay, just some comments from the experiences, we've all lived them here. First of all, I have some people that have expressed, some charities that have expressed interest in taking out permits this year. When is the due date on those, Jim?
I am not aware of the actual due date. I actually believe it's already passed, though. I think there was a window.
I think it's coming up.
I don't know.
We haven't received any permits, and I think the Boys and Girls Club has been carefully following, so I think it's coming up.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is, the survey here is that we actually can have up to 8 firework booths, but that's way too many, because they would be cannibalizing each other. But the way we used to have, so that everybody was treated fairly in all sections, was 5. So there are 4 other charities that are interested at this particular time. I'll tell you right now, if we were to ban fireworks in the city of Stanton, it would make a bit of difference. Not one bit of difference. We couldn't do anything different enforcement-wise than we're doing now, and we'd have the same illegal fireworks. The only ones we'll be giving tickets to are the ones that have the little boxes that are sitting on the curb with their families. And do we really have the manpower to enforce that? We aren't going to send any extra people out. We're not going to have any extra deputies out. If we can continue to help charities, I'm fully supportive of doing that. And so that's my point. Go ahead.
For me, I know there's a lot of nonprofits. This is their big fundraiser. And for me, this is a move on to option 7.
A lot of reasons to ban fireworks. The pollution, the injuries that occur to children every year. We only had 2 last year, but they were still serious burn injuries. But nevertheless, I brought this up in 2019 when I first came to council, and I lost on a 4-1 vote. And all I wanted to do was put it on the ballot and let the residents decide. And I still lost on a 4-1 vote, so I'm not going to push it. You can keep your fireworks.
You know, I will say that it's something interesting about our culture to let kids, run around with like little bombs in their hands, so to an extent, right, if we incentivize this, we're, causing more injuries, but I also see that there could be a reflexive reaction where the black market fireworks end up, being a little bit more prevalent rather than keeping the legal ones here in Stanton.
Go ahead, John.
If your kid's the one that loses digits on their fingers, it's a really sad situation.
Point out that public sentiment had changed over the decades, really. In the 1990s, it was really popular for cities to actually ban them. And many cities, most cities in Orange County had them banned. But to give you an example of this, the city of Fullerton, in the last 10 years, they've voted on this now 3 times, and they're currently legal in Fullerton. But the residents have gone to the polls and gone to the polls and gone to the polls, and they're legal right now. And otherwise, I agree with the other sentiments.
Okay, we're going to take a vote on this. Anybody in favor of banning all fireworks forever? 5-0, did not do this one. Okay. Is that Ellen back there? I can't see that one.
Option 7, adopt a social host liability ordinance. Existing state and city laws prohibit the use of illegal fireworks and impose penalties on offenders. Currently, state law generally requires that a law enforcement officer personally observe the actual person discharging illegal fireworks prior to issuing a citation. One of the many challenges of fireworks enforcement is that illegal fireworks are often ignited from locations that are not visible from the public right-of-way. Host liability shifts and broadens the focus of enforcement to include the person or host who provides the location. A social host liability ordinance allows for the citing of homeowners and tenants of properties where fireworks violations occur. Enforcement of the ordinance would typically be triggered by a call for service at a specific location or staff observation. Proposed provisions for a social host liability ordinance include social host liability. A host or social host means a person who permits or allows a gathering or person at their place of residence or other private property or any place under their control. A host is generally the person in charge of private property, including but not limited to an owner, tenant, landlord, or property manager of the property, or the person who organizes, supervises, officiates, conducts, controls, or is otherwise in charge of the activity on the property. There is an exception to the liability. Strict liability is placed on the social hosts for illegal fireworks used on their property unless the following exception applies. Social hosts who contact law enforcement or fire officials prior to those officials arriving at a scene or receiving a complaint of a violation. In addition, social hosts may also be held liable for violations in the public rights-of-way adjacent to their private property where the social host aided or abetted in the violation. Violation of the social host liability ordinance, like other violations of the firework ordinance, would typically be enforced through issuance of an administrative citation, not initiation of criminal proceedings, though the ordinance does not foreclose the option for the city to prosecute a violation as a criminal matter. The city has up to 60 days to issue citations after the violation occurred. The notices of violation would, as a practical matter, be mailed to the owner of the property on record unless the citing officials at the time of violation knew the identity of the tenant or other responsible social host. If the council is interested in pursuing development of a social host liability ordinance, the following timeline is proposed. Council would direct staff to prepare a social host liability ordinance. Staff would then work with the city attorney's office to prepare that ordinance, return to council on April 8th for the first reading of the social host liability ordinance, conduct the second reading on April 22nd, and adoption of the social host liability ordinance. 30 days after that ordinance would go into effect, but we would begin a public education campaign at the beginning of May, leading up to the 4th of July. The fiscal impact related to the adoption of the social host ordinance is requesting the city attorney's office to prepare the social host ordinance for adoption for the council.
Okay.
So let me go, do you want me to do 7B too, which is in addition to 7A, which is the drones? I'll just do them both together. Okay, that would make sense. If you would like, one of the options that other cities throughout California have successfully used in enforcing their social host liability ordinance is using enforcement with drones. So council could, if you decide to adopt the social host liability ordinance, you could also direct staff to contract for aerial drone services to support enforcement of the ordinance. In 2024, the city of Elk Grove, California, issued $240,000 in fines to individuals who launched illegal aerial fireworks during the 4th of July holiday, including one household that received $100,000 in fines. That was included for you in the staff report as attachment 2. Each violation of Elk Grove's illegal firework ordinance or each single firework is considered a separate offense equaling a $1,000 fine per occurrence. Elk Grove utilized an aerial drone to capture video to identify homes or properties where illegal fireworks were launched. Staff has received 3 quotes from professional aerial drone service providers for drone services between July 1st through July 4th. So the quote we requested was for about 5 hours of actual flying time on each of the nights of July 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th after dusk. In addition to that, each of the drone operators said that they would then rework all the videos to make it easier to see. No citations would be issued that night. The drone operators would capture all of this video footage, turn it over to the city, and then we would have city staff sit over the next 60 days, which is the time frame we have to issue citations. They would watch the video and issue citations based off of that. So there would be no interaction or confrontation on the night of. City Attorney's Office did, because the fines can be so excessive, there are certain property owners up to $100,000 in this particular case, the City Attorney's Office did reach out to the City Attorney of Elk Grove to understand how these worked. So there were some property owners or social hosts who challenged. They went to court, and the settlement they came up with was the property owner in the one case that received $100,000 in fines, they had to pay $25,000 in fines. And then if they were caught using illegal fireworks in the next 5 years, they would have to immediately pay the other $75,000. But it was upheld in court based on drone footage and the citations issued by city staff off their municipal code.
Go ahead.
I'm liking the sound of this so far. I just have a couple questions, okay? So how does this look like specifically? Like, I would like to envision how a process of citing somebody would look like.
So on the evenings that we procured the services of the aerial drone operator, they would most likely, we would ideally like to partner them with a city staff member just who has some familiarity with our particular geographics, but if not, we could send them with maps of neighborhoods to be in. So they would just take video for 5 hours. And then they would take that video back to their studio. They would do all the special editing. They were talking about they could make it so that even though it's dark, there could be really good contrast. And then they would turn that recorded video over to city staff. So literally, we would have an identified individual who would be the video reviewer, and they would have their citation pad, and then they would identify, okay, that's a firework. Hopefully they can identify if it's an illegal firework. I would argue that if they couldn't identify if it was an illegal firework, they should still write the citation and the homeowner can come appeal it, or the property owner or the social host. They would write that citation. It would be mailed to the property owner of record, which may or may not be an address in Stanton, right? If we have a landlord, they are still responsible under the social host ordinance. It would get mailed to them. The recipient of that citation could then pay the fine, go online and pay the fine. There is an appeal process on all of our citations documented on the back of the citation. If they believe they want to appeal, they could appeal, and then we would go through the appeals process. Just as a reminder, we mentioned earlier, 65% of any fines that we collect do have to be turned over to the state marshal.
One
Fire
last
marshal.
question. When they're taking the video and when we decide to cite or not, is there like a certain threshold on their property in which, you know, like where it stops or it goes? So for example, like on the sidewalk, is that like where the barrier ends? Or let's say if there's somebody exploding a firework in the middle of the street, how would this, you know, be sparsed out?
So I would say middle of the street, we wouldn't be able to cite because we wouldn't be able to identify which property that was related to, but the social host ordinance does have a provision that we can include, which is that if there is a contiguous right-of-way space next to a house, and with good reason you could argue that that house was using that public right-of-way, then you can cite. I think with the video, we would give some discretion to the individual who was reviewing it, and I'm sure for the first hour or two, they may want to reference with most likely Public Safety Director Jim Wren just to say, hey, like based on this, and then they would kind of have the understanding of here's the guidelines of what we're looking at and what we think is citable.
So there are many areas in our city where during the 4th of July, they all get together and they kind of like pull together their explosives, you know what I mean? Which I imagine would make it difficult to sparse out who, you know, was there, or, you know, who we would do the social host, you know, fee towards.
Sure.
So all I'm just worried about is, you know, making sure that we're very, how do you call it, like strict and disciplined when it comes to, you know, making sure that we do cite the right people.
Well, I think it's hard when you say cite the right people. I think part of the social host ordinance, a lot of people would argue I shouldn't be cited. I had a 4th of July party, somebody brought illegal fireworks, I didn't tell them to, but our social host ordinance doesn't make exceptions for that. And again, a landlord who's like, I live in Arizona and I rented my house and it's in my lease that you're not allowed to do anything illegal, but they did it, they are still liable. So I certainly understand the council's concern, but there's not a way to fine tune, right? So the citation would go out based on the basic facts. We witnessed an illegal firework being discharged on your property. The social host ordinance states this, hence you received a citation. I think we would try very hard to make sure that we were as accurate as possible, and we wrote as many citations that would be unappealable as possible, but there will be, I think, a certain margin of error.
Thank you, Hannah.
You know, along those lines too, I think one of the things that was brought up a couple of years ago was the fact that the drone has the ability, if somebody's taking illegal fireworks out of their car and lighting them off, and that car belongs to them, there's a license, and they take the license plate. Also, if they're selling out of the back of the car and the drone catches them, that's also licensed. So it doesn't necessarily, I really believe in the no-host ordinance, but also the drone has other capabilities. The reason I mentioned to you earlier about, well, you know, the camera seeing them do it, you can send somebody in, that's the old way they used to do it. The courts now have made more decisions on just the footage at a later date, and I think that's why it's more successful now. And I fully support this. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, one thing I'm curious about is flight restrictions in this area in particular, since we're within the JFTB landing zone. And the eastern portion of the city is within the 3-mile exclusion zone at Disneyland, so that we just get proper clearances for flying.
So all three of the operators I spoke to before they returned my calls, they had already researched the flight restrictions and were using technical language to walk me through everything. So yes, they seemed very well versed in what wasn't allowed, and they explained to me in this area you could do 100 feet, in this area 300 feet. So they seemed like they knew what the requirements were, and I would, again, hiring a contractor or consultant, that would be their responsibility to abide with any rules or regulations.
Yeah, and then I just wanted to add, I had the opportunity when the sheriffs were dealing with an incident with a tented house over near my house. I got to see how some of their newer drones work, and some of that technology is pretty incredible. It's props to your guys for those. Those drones are pretty cool.
Chief, does our drone department have drones that can do this? Just a thought.
No, we do not, Mr. Mayor. So our drones that are available are generally out of the traffic office or our special enforcement bureau, and are utilized for tactical situations, like what Councilmember Warren was discussing. So to try to dedicate those for a 4th of July is not realistic.
Would this be something that the IRAM board would be interested in looking for funding for the county and for the cities that contract with the sheriff's department? You think that would be a funding source for this type of thing?
I don't know if it would be for just a single night or a single day around the 4th of July. I think that the versatility of the drone is what we use it for in our situations is more applicable, I guess, to say than trying to dedicate, because number one, we have to have a pilot, a dedicated co-pilot. There's some logistical things that go into it as well. So it's not just, I can't just walk up to a scene, pull the drone out of the back of my car and go for a flight and look for things. I actually have to be FAA trained and signed off by the department. I have to have specific training. And then being able to fly a law enforcement drone in certain, like what Hannah was saying, you have to have certifications, you have to know the altitudes at which you can fly, the air restrictions, all of the above, so.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Hannah, sorry, so just to be clear, it wouldn't be our officers controlling the
Oh,
drones?
no.
It
This
like
would be a
another
third-party
agency, right?
contractor who is licensed, bonded, and a professional service provider.
Perfect, they'll have all of their licenses.
Yeah,
Correct.
They've done it before.
And I do just want to bring up one additional point. So we did look into, I know that this could raise privacy concerns for certain residents. So we did look into the privacy concerns. We would work carefully with the drone operator to primarily try to do front of house areas that you can view from the public right of way, whether that's a city street, a city sidewalk. It is, of course, inevitable that we will capture some backyard footage based upon the height of where the drone is. We did look into that. The way that we are proposing to use this, there are no legal problems with that, but we would work very carefully with the drone operator to try to focus on front of house and areas that are visible from the public right-of-way.
If a domicile has a stash of illegal fireworks, and they're taking them and walking out in the street and lighting and doing that continually, and we have that footage.
Sure.
I think
Oh,
that-
yes,
I
yes.
think that was a way to handle the concern about you had with the street. If there's a trail that shows the, possession, I think we'd be okay. if we
So,
do that.
again, just to set expectations for the council, we are only going to, if we proceed with this option, we would only hire one drone operator for this year to try out. So one drone operator will only be able to cover a certain amount of the city. So, if you're out in your neighborhood and you happen to see a lot of illegal firework activity, but we didn't happen to be in that neighborhood that evening, I just want to set expectations. This drone operator is not going to be like everywhere all at once, right? We will, I think, definitely identify more illegal users than we ever have, but we will not identify all the illegal users.
The good thing is, we do have just 5 or 6 areas of heavy concentration. If that's something that Jim is aware of, I think that might be a good place to try this on a trial basis, because we know that there's probably going to be fish in the pond that we can catch.
Sure.
Okay.
I had a little question about that. So it wouldn't just be one day on the 4th, right? It would be consecutive days?
So what I was proposing to the council was the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. And if the council wants to adjust those days or expand those days, we can certainly talk to so what I had originally asked for a quote on was July 1st through the 4th, about 5 hours per evening, like 6 p.m. to 11 p.m.
And that costs $5,000 per day or over total?
The lowest quote I got was total.
Talk about the schedule. I mean, is something we can discuss contractually if you want to do it. I think that's good. Remember, though, the drone is also a preventative measure, because if people think that there's a drone out there taking pictures of them blowing up skyrockets and the fine's $50,000, they may not want to do that. No, seriously. All right, how do we?
Can we get a vote?
Yeah, we voting on both?
Sure, let's do 7A and
So
7B.
this is 7 and 8.
7A and 7B. Sorry, I named them A and B.
All right. Is there anybody objecting? Okay.
Okay. So let me just recap so we can quickly finish this item and move on to our mid-year budget update. So we have approved the tip line, which was option 2, and that's to only call in the sale of illegal fireworks. We are going to communicate broadly the consequence of business license revocation for legal businesses engaging in illegal activity, which includes storing or selling illegal fireworks. And then we will pursue adopting a social host liability ordinance and directing staff to contract with a professional aerial drone provider to provide surveillance video on the evenings of July 1st through the 4th, with citations to be written over the following 60 days.
Very, very quickly, sorry, Mr. Mayor. When we do this, are you going to be going out and putting, I guess, flyers out that say, hey, this is the reward?
Oh, well, no, there's no reward. But we will advertise all of the strategies that the council has adopted this evening. We will use social media. We will use our website. I think we should get some type of additional physical thing. We will do everything we can. I think that's always been the council's preferred stance, is to educate first. So we will do everything we can to educate any stakeholders so that hopefully they are making a very well-informed decision if they choose to use illegal fireworks and they understand the consequences.
One more thing I'd like to discuss on fireworks are fines. I know that there's a limitation I think it's put on by the state for municipal code violations.
Yes.
What is the maximum we can get?
So
each fee?
it depends on the tonnage of how many pounds of
Increase it,
fireworks.
that will also
So
help.
it's in the
We're
staff
spending a lot of
report.
money for this. Question, we just have the thingamajiggy left,
The mid-year budget report.
and the budget report. that's
Oh,
what
I'm
I-
sorry, two things.
Yeah, the budget report and,
The seal and logo adoption.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. We can, if the council wants, we can table the seal and logo adoption to the next
I
meeting.
think that would be appropriate.
Okay, hang on one second. Sorry, I'm on
Anybody
the,
object to that? We'll table that to the next meeting.
so,
We would need to just complete discussion on this item before we move to table the next item.
I know, I just was, thinking ahead.
Okay, so for the current fines, let's just assume most people who use it are using a reasonable amount. So if you have less than 25 pounds, the first offense is $1,000, the second offense is $2,000, the third offense is $3,000. When we bring back the social host ordinance, we will work carefully with the city attorney's office to make sure these are stackable. So similar to what the city of Elk Grove did, if you light off 10, it's 10 times whatever the amount is, not 1 for lighting off 10. So again, currently in the municipal code, as the mayor stated, per state law, under 25 pounds of dangerous fireworks, first penalty $1,000, second penalty $2,000, third penalty $3,000. You do have to pay a disposal charge when you're fined, and so that actually raises the first penalty to $1,250, the second to $2,500, and the third to $4,000. And again, 65% of that needs to be submitted to the state fire marshal.
So if we had somebody on film that lit off 7 of them, that would be very costly.
Very costly.
And can we increase the base at all? Will you let us know? I mean, we don't have to do it tonight, but I'd like to know, because we always put it off to the last minute. We need to get it done now. Okay,
Yes, we can look into that, Mayor.
that'd be great.
Okay,
Let's get through the city logo stuff today. We should get through the city logo stuff.
so do we want to take, there was a motion on this item. Do I have a second? So the mayor made a motion. I reiterated it. Is there a second? On the fireworks. Okay, second from Mayor Pro Tem. I just restated it for him. Okay, and vote, so we're all tired, sorry. Voice vote or roll call?
A voice vote would suffice.
Okay, Mayor, can you do a voice vote, please?
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed, anybody abstained? That passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Okay, how long is the budget finance report going to be, do you know?
No, it's about 15 slides, so if we move through it quickly, we could probably do it in 15 minutes since the council has been briefed on the staff report prior to this
Okay, go
evening.
ahead. So, if it's a pleasure of the council, we can put the city logo thingamajiggy off until our next council meeting. I can't hear you.
Yeah, it's a quick one too. We can do that one. Okay, so would we like to go back to that one? Yes, please. Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I'll turn it over to Community Services Director Bobadilla, who will be providing the staff report this evening.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. Tonight, staff is presenting ordinance number 1161, which proposes adding chapter 1.14 to the Stanton Municipal Code. This ordinance establishes clear guidelines for the use of the city's official indicia, including the recently adopted seal and logo, to ensure their use is restricted to authorized city business. Attachment A includes visuals of the city's current seal and logo, as well as past versions and special use designs. The ordinance applies to all versions of the city's seal and logo, past, present, and future, including commemorative or event-specific designs used for special occasions. This ensures a consistent and legally protected brand identity moving forward. The proposed ordinance designates the city clerk as custodian of the seal and prohibits use of city indicia for private, commercial, or political purposes without city council approval. It also outlines penalties for misuse and aligns with state laws. In addition to the ordinance, we recommend repealing the 1990 resolution regulating the city logo and adopting an updated version of the City Council Rules of Order to reflect and reference the new ordinance. That concludes my staff report. Staff recommends that the council introduce ordinance number 1161, adopt resolution number 2025-06, and approve the associated actions. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Include two things in this. The city, it's the city, is this the city logo, right? Why shouldn't we include the city seal?
No, that's included as well.
It's for both the logo and the
This
seal.
includes both the seal and the logo, correct?
And anything
The visuals in attachment A reference past logos, commemorative designs, and future symbols as well.
Hey, it's okay, I'll just change one of the dates on it. I went up on you. I'll use the 100th anniversary seal. All right, any comments?
The one that's $10,000?
It's a 100-year seal. All right, any questions? All right, motion. All in favor?
Wait, is this for the city logo? Yeah. Okay, super quickly. Sorry. This is really good. Thank you, staff. This was really essential. Previous council felt like this was really important too. One thing that I would like to say about this is that, when it comes not only to like if there's like a resident using the Stanton logo, city could, do something about that. But when it comes to us up here, we're the ones who police ourselves. So I think it's really essential that we do that with the most respect we can. And that's about it. Thank you. So, yes.
Comment on top of that is people trying to exploit our graphics for profit, such as making merchandise and so forth. If that's something we want to explore in the future of having city t-shirts, cool, we'll do it. But otherwise, it allows us to control that matter.
All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstained? That's 5-0. Okay. You're up, Michelle.
Okay, I'll go to the title and then the end. So this is our mid-year budget update for this fiscal year. The timing is impeccable. But this is a good segue because in 2 months we'll be here with your proposed budget. So a lot of the decisions you make tonight help us set up what our starting point is as far as what is available for our operating and capital improvement program requests that staff's going to bring to you in May. So overall, all the budget adjustments for all city funds are included in Attachment A to the agenda report. For all city funds, the revenue estimates are increasing by $1.1 million. Over half of that, $617,915, is related to investment income. Our investment income, even throughout the remainder of this fiscal year, continues to be strong. We did collect over $2.4 million in interest revenue last year, and that's just actual interest revenue. That doesn't include like market value, non-cash related fluctuations. The revenue adjustments increasing our revenues by $617,000 citywide does not get us to the $2.4 million. That's just that seems crazy to appropriate all of that, to have that available for appropriation. So it's still very conservative. But most of it is that. And then expenditures for all city funds are reducing in this budget for all city funds in total by $815,662. Most of that is to Congratulations Public Works reducing our CIP budget by over $1.4 million for projects that are completed that came in under budget. And we'll go over at the very end, highlight what those projects are. That's important to do at this juncture so that we make that $1.4 million available for your decision packages or other capital improvement project needs we want to propose in next year's budget. So we want to reduce those budgets now. The meat of this project, or the meat of this presentation, is the general fund. Because see, I am doing it on here, and see, that was one slide. Yeah, I'm doing it here. Okay, so here's the general fund. Our bottom line is this should look like what we provided to you in May. But when we adopted the budget, we adopted it with revenues and the funding from our general fund assigned fund balance bucket exceeding our expenditures by $596,325. It's not so clear, but with our revised projections, that number is now $271,409. So it's lower, but at least the revenues are still more than the expenditures, so that's still a good thing. The reason for that is our total revenues are increasing by $1.4 million. That's good. But our expenditures are going to be increasing by $1.5 million, and we're going to explain why very briefly in the next couple of slides. This chart, let's see, there we go. This chart kind of does a side-by-side assumption of what we expected revenues to be when we adopted the budget last year, and what are the big things that changed. These are the largest categories in our general fund. So we expected property tax to increase about 5% based on, we expected assessed valuation to increase, and that to increase our property tax revenue by 5%. Our property tax assessed valuation did increase by more than 7%, so that's good. However, our property tax revenue isn't actually trending to be 5% higher than last year's budget. It's actually trending to be more like 4%. And that is because there are certain revenues in our property tax that aren't, that don't go in line with our assessed valuation. Primarily, our pass-through redevelopment property tax is down from our estimate, and property home sales in the city, which generate real property transfer tax in the city. Home sales in the city are down. Therefore, that tax is down. So collectively, there's a revenue reduction of a little over $18,000. We expected sales tax to be 3% higher than last year and measure GG to be 2% higher. There's nothing on this side. So the good news is we have no adjustments, and we're going to tell you in the next couple slides why. So that's great. And just so you know that, just a reminder, these revenue estimates are from our expert consultants, HGL companies, who take the sales tax activity in the state and in our city and help us prepare that crystal ball. So we are on target to meet these revenues, which is good news. Our cannabis tax revenues, we did expect a 99% increase because, as you remember, all 4 retailers were not fully operational the full 12 months last year. The good news is that number's actually 190% more than last year. So we budgeted $1.1 million this year, and we're actually trending to earn $1.8 million. Now, don't expect a positive 190% when we bring you our 25-26 revenues, because now that all 4 have been operating, we are seeing a more consistent monthly basis. We aren't seeing these double-digit increases month to month. It doesn't appear that the businesses that have delivery permits are fully operational, so there could be still an additional bump once they get fully meeting their demand for delivery service, but we will start seeing a flattening of this revenue. But good news for this year's budget, we're nearly 200% higher than what we thought last May. Collectively, we thought that UUT, our utility user tax, and our TOT revenues would be a modest 2% increase, mostly because one of the motels that we collect TOT revenue for, we expected to not receive that revenue because we expected a motel to close. It's not closed, and we're receiving that revenue. So, and our utility user tax primarily from water and electricity charges, and our TOT revenue collectively are actually 5%, trending to be 5% higher than last year's numbers versus the 2%. We expected, because of the solid waste agreement negotiated with CR&R, that our revenue would be about 15% more than last year. Based on actual revenue to date, it's trending more like 20%. So that's a positive increase of about $100,000 of revenue in our estimates. Collectively, we did expect that development activity and building activity would decline from our peak that we were having in the previous years. We did expect it to decrease by 34%. So our adopted budget, adopted revenues of 34% less than the previous years. We are seeing lower activity, but it's not that big. It's only 24% less. So that's an additional general fund additional revenue of about $175,000. I would say that our building inspection and building plan check activities are contracted by CSG. So part of our general fund expenditure increase is offsetting the additional revenues. If we're getting more building revenues, that means we're having to use more contracted services from CSG. Parking citation revenue. We generally, because we don't want to be, expecting people to continually violate parking. We have always traditionally just budgeted a base of $270,000. Many years we get more, sometimes we get less, but that's just kind of our baseline. So when we developed this budget, we didn't take into account overnight parking enforcement or anything like that. We just budgeted 270, which was a 10% decline from our actuals. And we are expecting, we have been getting about a 50% increase in our parking citation revenues. Is starting to see that since January, it's pretty consistently. Just like the building revenues, because we contract out the overnight parking, you're going to see an expenditure increase for that, plus 50% of our parking citation revenue goes to the county per state law. So you're going to see some offsets to that in the next page. So the gas tax reimbursement revenue and the sales tax and Measure GG are the same. This is just a snapshot, and I'm just going to look at it, just so you can see how lovely our sales tax and Measure GG has been doing. In many cities, the green is our Measure GG, and the blue is the sales tax. In many cities, the blue is actually higher than the green. HDL says that we're very unique, that our Measure GG has been consistently more, so more than 100% of our sales tax revenue. So that is great. You can see the growth from COVID-19 and the peak of our sales tax here and the decline. So as you've been probably hearing economists saying, there's reductions going on, we're hitting a recession, sales tax is lowering. You do see that in the last 2 years it has lowered from the peak, but year to year it's still slightly increased. This is the 2 and the 3% increase that we're seeing. I will say that based on the last sales tax data available, which was the quarter ended September 30th, 2024, Stanton's retail sales year over year were up 2.8%, and that is better than the county, Orange County, and the state were both down the same amount, 2.3%. And so out of the 35 Orange County cities, we had the 8th highest positive increase. So we're 8th place out of 35. That's pretty good. And we're going upward, where some cities and the county and the state are going down. So that's good news for us. So that's why we do not have any. Okay. This is the pie. This is Hannah's favorite chart. She wanted me to show you the pie. The pie is very evenly distributed. It shows that we're not relying on one category so much. And I want to explain why. Why is everyone else in the county down 3%, but Stanton is up 3%? So there's 2 categories that are driving the positives, and it's offset by 2 categories that are having the lowest negative fluctuations. And I want you just to understand, as we have new businesses coming and going into our city, we have some vacant, commercial properties, and what those opportunities are, what kind of businesses have been doing better in our city. So you can see from this pie that we're pretty evenly distributed, which is good. The 2 that are doing positive are the food and drugs area. I will tell you that our cannabis businesses are in this category, so that is a major driving factor. 3 of the 4 retailers are in our top 25 retail top sales tax producers of the city. So 3 of the 4 are in there. The other area that's doing well is the state and county pool. That's all of our people who shop online or purchase vehicles. Oh, go ahead.
How much percentage of cannabis makes up the percentage of food and drugs?
Oh, that's a good question. Let me get back to you on that.
How much do you buy?
Did you ask that?
How much the cannabis makes up of the
food and drink.
of the food? Yeah. Yeah. That is an easy number to find out, but in the interest of time, I'm going to I'll have follow up with the city manager after tonight. So the state and county pool, that's our online sales. The 2 that have been in decline the last year are the fuel and service station. The largest declines are fuel and service stations, mostly because in 2023, because this is based on 2024 and then 2023, gas prices were still over $5 a gallon. So gas prices are now normalized, so we're getting less revenue. And then also autos and transportation. So we had a used car dealership that I think closed, or the new one isn't performing as well. And also this includes like auto parts stores, and they have had a lot of declining sales in general in our city. So those are the two areas. I like to say honorable mention to our restaurants. So our fast casual restaurants are performing better in Stanton than other cities in the county. When we met with HDL, they thought that was interesting. And I thought that has a lot to do with Rodeo 39 and the types of businesses that are in there. So I wanted to end the revenues with a positive. This chart just shows you I had like bullet points on the other one explaining our revenue adjustments. This shows the actual dollars on the different lines. So the biggest ones were, here's the cannabis, that's $567,000. Here is fees and permits, that includes the CR&R and the building planning and engineering I was talking about. Fines and penalties.